Time now for a dose of our daily vitamin. And from the personal to the global, we're living in a chaotic world and tensions seem to be only rising. So here to help with 5 ways to help de-escalate conflict and protect your peace, Jessica T. Ornsby, also known as the DMV Lawyer. Jessica, thanks for joining us.
It's so fantastic to be here.
Jessica, this is Amy, our guest host today. And Jessica has been a frequent guest on Good Day DC. This is her first time on Lion Lunch Hour. So.
Love it. I love it. We connected in the green room. So great.
Yes. So let's dig in because I feel like we have conflict coming at us from so many directions these days.
Absolutely.
How do you even begin to regulate?
So the first thing is to realize that conflict is going to happen. It is a part of our life. And if we aren't expecting it, then we're going to have a hard time separating ourselves from it and self-regulating. But if you're anticipating it, even on the smaller scales, it's going to be a lot easier for you to handle it.
I was just telling her, I was at a dinner last night after traveling. It was a really long day, and I thought it was going to be relaxing. We were drinking wine, and we ended up talking about the war. And I wasn't ready. What could I have done, actually, when you're saying, if we're prepared, even if we're not expecting it, what's something I could have done to kind of calmed myself down in that moment?
So boundaries, that's like my favorite word. Boundaries are for ourselves and not for other people because they protect us. They don't control the other person. So if someone wants to engage in a discussion that you're not prepared for, you're just not in that space, you can say, hey, I just can't have this conversation right now. So I don't want to talk about the war during dinner. And if somebody respects you, they'll respect your boundary.
When it comes to, in effect, preserving your friendship and relationship when you set those boundaries, talk about how that can play out in a work environment, because I do think it's different when it comes to family, friends versus the professional.
Oh, of course. So you have to think about the dynamic. You don't want to lose your job, right? So the way that you're going to respond to your boss or your coworker might look a little different than you would respond to someone who you have that close relationship with. Even just your word choice, your tone, how you're setting an example as a leader within that work environment. So keeping in mind that relationship that you want to preserve can also help inform how we engage in the conflict.
We're talking about other people as the ones maybe. What if you're the conflict? What if you're the one, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. How do you kind of work on you and maybe take heed of those boundaries and those alerts that go off, even the nonverbal cues, and maybe you've overstepped some boundaries?
So sometimes I am the conflict. And that is when I have to think about the relationship and say, okay, is this how I would want them to talk to me? I might also need to go to therapy. I might need to work on those triggers because perhaps I'm getting too triggered all the time, or it's a particular thing that I just haven't worked through. And I love therapy. That's always going to be one of my points related to conflict. Go to therapy.
Yeah, and I do follow you on social media. And actually earlier today I was speaking with a coworker who told me that they started really monitoring what they're following, who they're following, to create a more peaceful experience on social. Can you talk about bringing some of those same principles to the digital world?
I was actually doing this the other day and didn't realize it. I was setting boundaries for myself on social media by unfollowing pages that made me feel bad about myself because I was in conflict with what I was consuming. So boundaries have to exist in all spaces of our lives. And because it's for us and not for other people, we set the boundaries that are appropriate for what we need at that time.
Can we even write in comments and kind of put our boundaries out there also, so that people who do follow us, even if we have disagreements or we don't always see eye to eye, that it can still be a calm and peaceful place to visit?
Absolutely. So you can set filters on your comments so that you can't see certain things. I do that all the time. And you can also choose to ignore comments. That's an option that we have. Or you could just be very blatant and say, I just will not engage in certain types of discourse.
What about blocking? Because that's what I do. I don't have time. I don't go by the point by point. If you come at me crazy, I'm blocking you.
I'm guilty of that. My block button is heavy. But I've also have learned that might be myself being avoidant and avoiding conflict, which is a option for conflict resolution, but it may not be appropriate for every relationship that we have. Blocking may be appropriate, though, if someone continues to violate your boundaries.
repeat offenders.
Absolutely.
Got it. Well, Jessica, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
keeps
for having
bringing
me.
Oh my gosh, well, I
Yeah.
can't see her as the conflict either. I'm just saying.
Thank you. Enjoy you. That's where you can follow her to get all these recommendations and more.